Hey guys, we continue the series of principles and now it's time for the second part of the game, the middle game stage. It's always good to know some theory which can result in getting the better positions in the middle game. But most of your results, whether you win or lose, comes from the mistakes that you make in the middle game part. Today, I will cover 10 principles that can help you to perform better. With that being said, here we go. Principle number 1. If your opponent owns two pair of bishops, try to trade one of them, since this will withdraw the dominance that your opponent had over the squares with the help of his bishops. Here we can see that white has a knight and bishop versus two pair of bishops for black, and by playing bishop e4, white is offering to trade the light square bishops. And once this trade happens, now it is much more easier for white, since he should not think about these light squares. Principle number 2. Keep the back rank protected. Well, usually, let's be honest, sometimes when we attack to our opponent, we completely forgot the safety of the king, of our king, of course, or sometimes we kind of bring all our pieces to the opponent's side without really thinking about our king safety. Keeping the back rank protected is always necessary once you're leaving your first or the 8th rank. And having the kind of like a bolt hold for your king, let's just say g3 or h3, is not only helpful that you will not get checkmated from the back rank, but at the same time, your king will always have kind of like a safe square to escape for. Our next principle stands for do not let your pieces get overloaded. An overloaded piece usually has more than one task, like defending two pieces at the same time. And usually having the overloaded piece will lead you a loss of material, and the reason for that, sometimes you will leave something unprotected when you're forced to move. And the current situation is that, let's just say you are playing with the white, everything is under control, and white is playing bishop h6, which kind of looks normal at first sight, but actually if you pay attention here, queen becomes overloaded. Why? Because it is defending c2, since the rook is putting the pressure, and at the same time, white is protecting the bishop. And once black takes our bishop, we are forced to move, which means taking the bishop. And now, as you can see, our c2 pawn left unprotected, and black is winning our pawn. Principle number 4. Do not recapture pieces immediately. I would say that usually lower rated chess players will kind of this sort of principle, but it's actually very helpful if you follow it, and it will lead you to much more success. Basically, there will be some times in chess that your opponent captures your pieces and you recapture them back immediately without taking a second. But here, something you need to do different. Once your opponent captures your piece, just try to consider some sort of like a forcing moves that are available. Forcing moves such as checks or sacrifices. And they're always like a powerful weapon to surprise your opponent. Here, as we can see, is that black is capturing our rook, and here definitely we can recapture back with the knight or with the rook. But let's see, do we have even interesting option than that? And if you see, it is actually, which means we can take our opponent's pawn with the check with the queen. King goes f8. Yep, still we have the opportunity to recapture it back, but since we have an even stronger option than that, we go for mate. Principle number 5. Exchange of the opponent's fianchettoed bishop. Usually, by doing this sort of stuff, you will be able to create the weaknesses around your opponent's king side, and this will lead you to create some sort of the attack. Here you can see is that black got the fianchettoed bishop, which means both of the sides have dark square bishops. And in order to trade these bishops, we need to move queen d2, which can result in to play bishop h6, and let's just say something black plays like this. After bishop h6, whether he takes or he will kind of makes another waiting move, by taking ourselves, we create this sort of dark squares problems on the black's king side, and now this sort of weakness usually can help us to create the attack, such as like pushing the h4 pawn and making this weakness even way more weaker. Moving on, principle number 6. Whenever your opponent got a passed pawn, try to blockade it. And the best way to do it would be with your knight. And the reason why it's good to blockade the passed pawn with the knight is that you will not only stop your opponent's passed pawn, but at the same time still you are able to control much more squares with your knight. Principle number 7, trade off your opponent's best placed piece. If you are playing the game and during the middle game you're seeing that your opponent kind of got off like a strong piece on the board, right? And this is a moment that you need to figure out how you can eliminate that piece. Here we can see that it kind of comes from the Queen's Gambit opening, and currently if you're playing with the white, what do you think? What's your opponent's best placed piece? And it stands for his bishop on d6, since it's controlling much more dark squares. And as our rule suggests that, trade off the best placed piece. And the best way to do it that by playing bishop h3, and now by doing that we are removing our opponent's the strong piece from the board. I hope you are taking the notes so we don't forget these principles and we keep moving forward. Principle number 8. Pawn majority distant from the enemy king can result in advantage. Pawn majority basically means that in one side of the board you have more pawns than your opponent, such as 3 versus 2 or 4 versus 3. We can see is that white got the pawn majority right now on the king side, but on the other hand black got the pawn majority on the queen side, which is kinda far from the white's king. And by trading off the queens and pushing the pawns, we can see that pawn majority usually will result in to create a passed pawn. Which means if you already have a good position, now it gets even way more better. Principle number 9. Avoid creating any sort of pawn weaknesses, such as isolated, doubled, tripled, and pawn islands. And the main reason for that, once you got the pawn weaknesses and it's a very serious problem, it will lead you to lose the game very easily. And our final principle goes for force your opponent to advance one of his hanging pawns. You should not stop putting the pressure to your opponent's hanging pawns until he will advance one of them. Here by playing rook a d1, as you can see, we are putting the pressure on the d5 pawn, and now since black got only one rook, he's forced to push d4. Which means by pushing d4 pawn, now it can result in to create like a hole, or we can say outpost for the whites, the bishop. And we can do that by simply kicking out the knight from e5, and once it goes somewhere, and now bishop is just doing great on the c4. I hope these principles were helpful for you. Thanks for watching as always. I'll see you in other videos.